Ray, I want to get right into it. So the Fed cut rates by 50 basis points this past week, and this should create a massive change in the car market. But I feel like you have a little bit different opinion about this, so I want to go ahead and get your take on this, and then I'll give my take, and we'll discuss it.
I think it's important that the Fed did cut the rate. I think it's important that rates come down a little bit. My suspicion is that the consumer side of things, we're not going to be seeing any real rate reductions probably for quite some time. My suspicion is that the banks are going to look at this as a way to make additional money and not necessarily lower their rates right away. And so I don't think we're going to see any real savings on the consumer end unless it is manufacturers offering less expensive subsidized interest rates, because the cost of doing that for them will go down.
So my take on this is, yeah, I agree with you. The initial 50-point basis cut is not really going to do anything immediately, but this is just the beginning of a cycle. So I don't know where their end target's going to be. They're going to be, I would think they're going to be data dependent, even though they have pulled away from the data dependent element of it now, because they're cutting 50 basis points when they did not even hit their target. So they were trying to reach a target of 2% inflation. That's not overall inflation. It's year over year inflation that they measure. It's not overall inflation. Obviously, overall inflation is more than 2%. But we're at 2.5% year over year inflation at the moment, and that's not their target. So it's weird for me to hear the Fed do this and them say, okay, we didn't hit our target yet, but we're still going to cut rates. And we're not going to cut rates by just 25 basis points. We're going to cut rates by 50 basis points. So that's telling me, someone listening to Jerome Powell speak, is that, okay, something's breaking. Something's wrong, where they feel like, okay, they didn't hit their target, and now they still feel the need to cut 50 basis points. I know they want to get ahead of the curve. I know that but I feel like they're seeing weakness in the economy, that maybe it's not as great as what we're led to believe. What do you think about that?
Well, what was it, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, where everybody was saying, well, the Fed's late in lowering the Fed rate. They're dragging their feet. They should have done it already. I think that was the day the market crashed, like, I don't know, 1,000 points. And everybody was saying, oh, it's the Fed's fault. It's the Fed's fault. And then, I don't know, the market came back anyway. 11 of the 12 people voted in favor of lowering the rate by 50 basis points. Some of the excuses that I've heard is, well, but all the data is trending in the right direction. Yes, we did not hit the goal that we set, but it's trending in that direction and we should be fine. What the underlying issues are, I don't know. Could it be political? It is a presidential election year. Do things get manipulated like that for elections? Quite possibly. There's an awful lot of layoffs and an awful lot of indicators that suggest perhaps the economy isn't as strong as they would like us to believe. And yet the stock market, which isn't necessarily a reflection of the economy, I get that, but the stock market is hitting all-time record highs almost on a daily basis these days.
So my worry, we're here for the car market, right? So yes, we're talking about the car market. So here is my worry for what the Fed is starting to do. And we have this article from Automotive News saying, how much auto demand will the Fed's half-point rate cut produce? And we both are in agreement, not much, just a half point. But this, as they continue to cut rates, now the thing of it is, lower rates from Fed funds rate doesn't necessarily mean lower rates. So the rates from automotive and like mortgages, they follow the 10-year. And what was interesting, the 10-year went up after Fed cut. That's a discussion for a different time. But eventually, the 10-year should start to lower, I would assume, as Fed funds rates continue to go down, which should push down rates in the automotive sector of things. So what I would anticipate is that this would create some more buying pressure, maybe not a ton, but if we get down 1.5, 2% more, then I think that will create a lot more buying power for people trying to get loans. It's going to also probably ease up some of the lending practices that have tightened up over the last year and a half, which allows some people who weren't eligible for loans to start being able to get loans. And if you create more buying pressure in the market, that's we've already seen these automakers have learned that, okay, we can make fewer vehicles and make more money if we just charge more. Then that creates this artificial supply crunch again if they continue to try to do that. My worry, and I want to hear your take on this, but my worry is that this creates more inflation in the car market if they continue to go this route.
I think it could. We both understand that the vast majority of people who purchase vehicles, automobiles, trucks, whatever, finance them, and what they are concerned with is what their monthly payment will be on that vehicle. So a 50 basis point reduction, if it gets reflected in consumer retail rates, really doesn't impact the payment all that much. It might impact the payment $5 a month. Now, if there's a 1 to 1.5% difference, then we might start seeing some significant savings in payments, which would make it easier for payment buyers to get back in the market. My fear is that if the rates come down, manufacturers will no longer have a reason to start producing lower priced, less expensive entry level vehicles, which is what the market seems to be asking for. So yes, in a sense, if consumer rates drop 1.5 points, that might mean that the average transaction prices or the entry level vehicles that they might have built might not get built, because they'll figure they can sell enough cars to the remaining people that can actually afford to buy cars at these higher prices. So in that sense, yeah, I think it could be inflationary, because if there was no rate cut, at a certain point, manufacturers have to start reintroducing entry level vehicles. And this could give them an excuse not to.
So the thing that would help, if what we're saying is correct, if it creates more buying pressure for consumers in the new side of things, it would actually help out used car prices. So I'm a used car dealer, and the only way that I'm able to get used cars from these auctions is from vehicle trade-ins. So the new market and kind of the used market sometimes work in inverse of itself, where the new market is suffering right now because these franchise dealers aren't able to sell cars. And what that creates fewer trade-ins for used car dealers like myself. So inventory stacking up at new car dealers, and it's getting fewer and fewer at these dealer car auctions, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That inverse relationship can what it can do with these rates being lowered. If more vehicles are purchased on the new side, then it can create more used inventory for dealers like me, and thus pushing some prices down on the used side. And that's that. I don't know what fixes the market. I think it's MSRPs that get lower right now is what can fix it. But this could be another thing that could potentially fix the used market, whereas it would hurt the prices of the new market.
Exactly. You would be able, it would be beneficial for people who are looking for pre-owned cars. And we know today that with where pricing is, the average person coming in and looking at getting a new vehicle these days is getting out of a 6 years or older pre-owned car that they're looking to trade in. So those are the type of cars and the older ones that you would be interested in. So if those people come back into the market and the interest rates are cheap enough that the payments are cheap enough, because let's face it, if you were in a 6-year note from 2018, the average payment back then on a new car might have been $500 a month, where today it's $750 a month. And even if rates come down 1.5 points, the average payment is still going to be north of $700 a month. That could be so shocking to these people that even though they might be in the market, they're going to be afraid to buy because they might not feel as if they can afford that extra $200 a month. But let's assume for a second that these people get back into the market, buy cars. Yes, that's going to create trade-ins, and that's going to create more inventory for you. I have an interesting question I want to ask you.
Yeah, go for it.
You go to the auctions, you buy cars. Is there a way for you to track what type of dealerships these cars are coming from? Or are the trades that you're buying, are they coming from domestic dealerships, or are they coming from import dealerships?
I can see every dealer that's bringing their vehicles to the auction. So that's actually interesting. I haven't tracked that data, but it's something that like I can pull from Mannheim. I can pull from Odessa. I can see the amount. The problem is you have to know exactly how many cars that dealer brings on a weekly basis, and if their averages are dropping, that's a problem. So just anecdotally, what I can see when I'm going to these auctions that I go to, there was an auction we went to this past Thursday, and it seemed like they were off by like almost like 40% of how many cars that they were sending through the auction. And sometimes that happens like around a holiday or something like that, but we didn't have anything really big that would throw any kind of wrench into the system. And it was just, I mean, me, Alex, the guy that I bring with me that he helps us out filming and stuff. He was like, I mean, I've been to this auction a few times. I've never seen it this light of cars. So it's alarming to see how few trade-ins are coming into the system right now. And something's gotta break. I don't know if it's interest rates. I don't know if it's MSRPs. I don't know if it's all of the above, or it's just maybe the economy overall, but people are not buying cars from these franchise dealers. And we're seeing it, and it's hurting me.
Yeah, I obviously there's certain brands, Toyota, Honda, that are working on a very short supply of vehicles, and they're either pre-selling or quickly selling whatever it is that is reaching their lots. A lot of the domestics are struggling with inventory. But if an auction is off by like 40%, I would be curious as to what kind of month new car dealers are having nationally during the month of September. If vehicles are that light at the auction, if they're not seeing inventory coming into the auction, that would indicate to me that dealers aren't selling cars because they're not taking any trade-ins. And that's scary.
What I can tell you that I am seeing, I'm not seeing in like 2022 4Runners, but I'm seeing a ton of like 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokees go through. These are vehicles that like a Dodge Ram dealership or a Jeep Dodge Ram dealership over the last 2 years, they would have kept that just a 2-year-old vehicle. And Toyota, they have to keep those because they need to sell them. But a lot of these Jeep Dodge Ram dealerships, I've even seen brand new Jeep Grand Cherokees, Grand Wagoneers go through some of these auctions. Rams, seen a lot of Ram 1500s that are brand new going through these auctions. And yes, even though it's going to be sold by a second dealer, the vehicle can still be sold new to a consumer that doesn't get titled yet to an actual consumer, so it can still be considered new. And I'm seeing those go through the auction that have 200 miles on them. So there are new vehicles that dealerships are trying to unload. I'm assuming they're trying to get them off their floor plan to not pay this interest. That leads me to my next thing. We'll tie this up just on this topic real quick, and you can add to whatever I just said. But their credit lines, floor plan. This should, even just a point or 2 points, this should still save dealerships a ton of money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a half a point when you're floor planning $10 million worth of cars, well, that's a lot of money. So yeah, this bodes well for the dealers. It helps to mitigate their floor plan expenses, which have risen dramatically over the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, floor plan assistance from the vehicle manufacturers to the new car franchise dealers, that became a profit center because the dealers had all the cars pre-sold and the vehicles never sat on the lot. So whatever floor plan assistance they collected from their various manufacturers just went towards the bottom line. And obviously in the last year or so, that's changed. It went from a profit center to now it's a huge expense. So any movement down on the cost of floor planning will save dealers a lot of money. Takes a little of the pressure off them to move their inventory as quickly as we as consumers might like to see. But the inventory, if the inventory is remaining stagnant, and I have a gut suspicion that to a certain degree it is, we see inventory levels building up again. It's going to be difficult for dealers to continue to sit on all this inventory and just pay interest on it. And that the car business is a cash intensive business. Cash flow is king. So if you're sitting on inventory that you can't sell, brand new inventory, at least when you take it to the sale, you're replenishing your cash flow pretty quickly, as opposed to waiting another 30, 60, 90 days for a customer to come in and buy that car.
And it's all about taking the loss today versus taking a bigger loss in 60 days from now, right?
Exactly. I think the first loss is usually your smallest loss.